See, when people think Inquisition, they think Catholics versus Protestants. They don't think Negroes and Jews. But the Inquisition quickly became a war against Negroes by the Catholic Church. Piercing shrieks of anguish filled the land. Childless and brokenhearted, they now sought to leave, but they were told they had forfeited their right and were given a choice between baptism or slavery. And after enduring all they did, after leaving their beloved Spain with all their wealth and ease, they were submitted to baptism now, in the hope of being reunited with their children. Thousands were sold as slaves. Yet prior to being sold, they were submitted to tortures, cruelties, to revolting, to repulsive, to heart-rending, to be here narrated. All Jewish children below 14 years of age were to be torn from their parents' arms or were beaten with clubs, dragged into a church and baptized. Those under 3 years of age were given to Christians to be raised as slaves. Those between 3 and 10 years of age were put on board of a ship and conveyed to the newly discovered unwholesome island of St. Thomas, called YASHAR'EL, or the Isles of Destruction.
The Jews have experienced fully the unequal skill of the church in administering pain. Mothers cast themselves at the feet of the tyrants and pitifully begged to be taken with their babies. They were heartlessly thrust aside. Hundreds of mothers, mad with despair, ran behind the ships as they carried off the idols of their heart and perished in the waves. The same fortitude with which the exiled people had borne so many.
The Moors and Jews of Spain, by Joseph Kroskoff.
From Yaya to Negro to the village of the Negros, to the chief rabbis, to governors of Spain and Portuguese brews, to the Great Expulsion in 1492. After Spain conquered the city of Granada, the king and queen of Spain told all the Jews to convert to Christianity, get out, or die. Many of these brews fled directly into Africa. In fact, the exodus of hundreds of thousands of brews from Spain had created such a stir in Europe that the harbors of Spain were crowded with ships ready to carry them to Africa and other destinations. As the following reference reads, and it reads, the Spanish Jews had made such widespread repute, and their expulsion had made so much stir in Europe, that crowds of ships were ready in Spanish seaports to take up the wanderers and convey them to all parts, not only the ships of the country, but also Italian vessels from Genoa and Venice.
The Spanish Inquisition, established in 1478, was aimed at consolidating the Catholic Church's power by targeting heretics, among whom were conversos, Jews who had converted to Christianity, and Moriscos, Muslims who had been baptized as Christians. The Inquisition employed brutal methods, including torture, to extract confessions and enforce orthodoxy within the Spanish kingdom. During this period, many Jews declared their conversion to Christianity to escape persecution, but these conversos remained targets of suspicion and violence, leading to widespread fear and eventual expulsion. In 1492, the Catholic monarchs Ferdinand and Isabella issued an edict that forced Jews to either convert to Christianity or leave Spain. This expulsion had a catastrophic impact on the Jewish community, stripping many of their possessions and forcing them into exile.
Something was happening to these Negroes in Macombo that really should sound all too familiar to a black American. They were called auto de fe's, meaning acts of faith. Auto de fe, from the Portuguese auto de fe, meaning act of faith. a ritual of public penance carried out between the 15th and 19th centuries of condemned heretics and apostates, or those who refused to convert to Christianity, imposed by the Spanish and Portuguese Inquisition as punishment and enforced by civil authorities through beatings, hangings, and its most extreme form of death, by burning. Now, if we pay close attention to this timeline, we might see that the 15th to the 19th centuries is the exact same timeline of the expulsion, enslavement, beatings, hangings, and burnings of the Negroes, which was done in the territories of the Inquisitions by the executors of the Inquisition under the guise of acts of faith. Remember, the slave trade started with papal decrees of the Holy Roman Empire. When were they made, you might ask? Well, 1450 and 1493. 1493? But wait, in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. So just a year later, all this started? And within a decade, the auto da fés and later slaveries began. Let's not forget that 50 years later in 1550, the definition of Negro was changed from Black Portuguese to Native African. Lastly, when the slave colonies were established in Guinea, West Africa, by the Portuguese, which were filled with the enslaved children of the Negro Jews of Spain and Portugal, the territory, which was previously known as the Western Sudan or Yahudiym, now became known after the arrival of the enslaved Portuguese as Negro land, and the slave coast as the Kingdom of Judah. The Kingdom of Judah by the slave traders. I could speak on what they said about the inhabitants of Ouida, but I'd rather let them speak for themselves. This quote is from Press and Bulletin Magazine, language document from the Society of Geography. Ouida, Fida, Huida, Ouida, Judah or Judah is a ancient city frequented since the 16th century by Portuguese slave traders who gave it its name. Its inhabitants were said to be Judaic and were viewed as a remnant of the scattered tribes of Israel. And the smoking gun is that these appellations, Negro land and Kingdom of Judah, was actually given by the Portuguese slave traders. Now, let's take an even closer look at the auto da fés. The act was started by what is called the Procession of the Penitents. The process began at the doorway of the Inquisitor's Palace, located on the Plaza of Santo Domingo, and worked its way toward the Central Plaza. At the front of the procession, the Inquisitors marched with their crucifix, carrying torches, whose black veils symbolized that Christ was in mourning for the heretics. The prisoners were escorted and guarded by the inquisitorial militia. And each was accompanied by two familiars of the Inquisition. Those who were sentenced to receive the punishment of public flogging also had a knotted noose or a cord around their neck as a sign that they would receive lashes or go to the galleys, or eventually be hung and burned at the stake. The images that you're seeing on your screen is from the Procession of the Penitents that would have taken place on the Auto da Fé, reenacted yearly in Spain. And these other images are the Ku Klux Klan in America. Is this just a coincidence that the auto da fés were mostly executions of Negro Jews, and the Ku Klux Klan is an organization whose sole purpose is to execute the Negro and hate Jews? Both start with a procession, with a militia holding crosses and torches on their way to lynch and potentially burn alive. Both were considered as arms of the church. Both believed that the murder of the Negro was a auto da fé, or an act of faith. When a competent number of the prisoners are convicted of heresy, either by their own voluntary or exhorted confession, or upon the evidence of witness, a day is fixed by the chief inquisitor for a gold delivery, which is called by them an auto de fe, or act of faith, and which is always upon a Sunday. The caveat against the pretender being a short but impartial history of some of the assassinations, murders, and inhumane slaughters committed by Papists, by J. Morley, 1723. Dylan waited in hope for the next auto de fe, and after a length of time, he was roused one night by the gaolers bearing lights. Having dressed himself and put on a black garment striped with white lines and a pair of drawers, which they had brought for him, he was led into the gallows for hanging, where he joined about 200 other prisoners, all ranged against the walls. They were mostly colored men. Well, let me say that again. They were mostly colored men, there being only about 12 white persons amongst the 200. The Inquisition revealed in its origin, policy, cruelty, and history in Spain, Portugal, and France by Reverend Thompson Timpson.
Another important note is that the exodus of the Negroes from Spain wasn't a single event. Instead, it was a sustained event over many, many years. Indeed, the sons of David had endured persecution after persecution by the hands of the Christians, until finally, many fled Spain and Portugal for Africa. For the sons of King David, this was their Christian nightmare. And so, some Negroes fled from Spain and went directly into North Africa. And from there, they moved deeper into the interior, past the Sahara Desert, and settled in a place called Negroland, also called Yahudiym, also called Lamland. And the sons of King David had returned to the continent they left long, long ago. And indeed, the sons of King David had returned.